Hello, hello, hello. So I have a different kind of setup today. I have a little mic here because my mic on my camera is broken. So I don't know. It's given professional, right? Yeah. It's given professional. I don't know. I'm a professional or whatever. No, but listen, we gotta talk. Come here. Okay, come here. Hey girl. Are you an option in your life right now? Are you a supporting character in your life right now? Do you feel like your energy is depleted? Do you feel like you keep giving and giving and giving to other people and you're not getting anything back? Or do you feel like you have no time for yourself? Do you feel neglected? Are you sitting down right now feeling like, dang, I have not done my hair in weeks, or I have not gotten out of this bed in weeks, or I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired, I have so much on my plate? And is your to-do list filled with things that are for other people and not yourself? Oh babe, that's not okay. And we got a problem, okay? We have a general problem. And look, I am never ever gonna sit here and tell you to be a selfish, mean. Okay, stop that. I am never gonna sit here and tell you to be a selfish, mean, stepping on somebody else's toes kind of person. Let's get this straight. Let's talk about the difference between being selfish and putting yourself first and making yourself a priority, because I think people get this kind of confused. And I definitely, when I started my self-love journey, I got it confused because I was like, how do I stop? How do I make myself a priority without being mean? Or how do I do this without people thinking I'm selfish? Girl, you are not selfish for putting yourself first, okay? I think a selfish person is somebody who kind of wants to step on everybody's toes, get ahead of other people, treat people essentially like dirt, and be mean and just do things for their own personal gain. Like, that's what I consider a selfish person. But when I think about somebody who puts themselves first or makes themselves a priority, is somebody who pours into themselves first, is somebody who loves on themselves, is somebody who chooses themselves, consider themselves in situations, while also, when their cup is full, when their cup is overflowing, they are able to give that same love back to other people who treat them well, who love them like they should. They're able to give that back. But you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot give back love if you are not giving that love to yourself. How do you expect to know how to be treated if you don't treat yourself well? A lot of times we don't know how to be treated because you don't give that love back to yourself, or you don't know how to treat yourself. You know, you might be so used to a certain way. So maybe when you were younger, you were so busy putting everybody first and people demanding things from you. So now that you might be in your 20s, say you're in your 20s, now you're doing the same thing. You are putting everybody else's needs above your own, and you're essentially going crazy because of it, because you aren't happy, you aren't putting yourself first, you aren't making yourself a priority. That is not okay. I still believe in giving, I still believe in pouring into other people also, but I believe in pouring into yourself first. And let me tell you, people treat you how you treat yourself. And if you treat yourself in a way where you are constantly people pleasing and giving so much to other people without giving to yourself, people can sense that energy. It kind of, let me not say that. I'm not gonna say that. But people can sense that energy of you just needing them more than you need yourself, and you have to need yourself. And this is not to say that people are disposable and that you don't need people, because we all need a tribe around us. We all need people around us. But are you needing yourself? Are you giving yourself the things that you need? Are you loving on yourself? That is the big question. So, oh my God, I'm sorry for that rant. But how do you make yourself a priority? Let's get into it, right? So the first thing is this is going to require some healing work, okay? Some kind of healing work. So I want to talk to the people that may not believe that they matter, because sometimes when people don't make themselves a priority, it's because you don't think that you matter, or it could be the fact that in your childhood you were just so used to giving that that's something that you're programmed to do. But you have to believe that you matter. That's the first step in making yourself a priority, because I think when you're so used to giving and you're so used to people pleasing, you start thinking like, oh my God, like other people matter more than me. And if I do this for other people, people are going to see me a certain way. It's essentially like people pleasing. Like you're scared of what other people might think about you. If you start pouring into yourself, if you start giving things to yourself, you're like, oh my God, but people need me. That like, if I don't do this, then, people are gonna look at me a certain way, or they're not gonna be my friend, or they're not gonna do this. Listen, if people feel that way about you when you start putting yourself first, they were never your friend in the first place. And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But like I said, it comes down to believing you matter. And the way you have to be honest with how you feel about yourself, okay? And this can be hard to look at yourself and look at yourself on the inside and be like, dang, do I think I matter? Like, do I think I matter? So you have to believe you matter. So how do you start knowing if you believe that you matter? Okay, I would say go about your day to day and maybe carry like a really small journal and ask yourself, like, not ask yourself, but carry a small journal around you and go about your day to day and pay attention to your thoughts that are popping up in your head. Are you saying mean things to yourself? Like, are you saying, oh man, you are so stupid, you're never going to be successful, you're this, you're that? Like, are you saying mean things to yourself? And if you are, I want you to write it down and start assessing like where these thoughts are coming from, where have they came from, why do you believe this thing about yourself, and then changing it into a positive. And these are things that I've talked about before on my channel, and it really does work. Like changing your thoughts into a positive thought really does work. So that's the first step, is becoming self-aware to know like, hey, do I believe that I matter? Because if you believe you matter, then you're going to treat yourself like you matter. But if you do not believe you matter, you're not going to treat yourself like you matter. Another way to know if you feel like you matter is look at what you have repeatedly tolerated currently in your life. I'm not talking about the past and that you and the things that you no longer tolerate, but I'm talking about the things that you're currently and you keep on tolerating in your life. Do you keep tolerating people hurting you or mistreating you? That's a big indication of what you believe about yourself. Do you keep people pleasing? Do you keep putting other people before you? Okay. And if you are doing this, it's like you have to look back at the root of it all. Because like I said, it could be something from childhood where you felt like, oh man, other people, I have to give more to other people or whatever. So this is also gonna require some healing work of like, trying to put forth an effort to put yourself first instead of believing that other people matter more than you do. And a great way to combat this is also therapy. I've talked about this before. I always talk about therapy, but it's such a good thing, and I've been in therapy before. I kind of want to go back, yeah. But therapy is so great. It's scary, but it's great, and it really will help you like crack down on the root cause of like why you feel the way you do. So I definitely recommend going to a therapist. So after we're doing our healing work or whatever, let's talk about having a whole day dedicated to self-care. This is so important because if you are so used to pouring into other people, odds are you probably don't have a day just dedicated to you, dedicated to pouring into yourself, dedicated to loving yourself. So this can include so many different things. So self-care isn't just your routine, your hygiene routine, right? Self-care could be your hygiene routine. It could be cleaning your apartment, cleaning your space, cleaning your room. It could be hanging out with a friend because you really need to vent. It could be watching a movie. It could be taking yourself on a solo date. It could be you doing your hair, you having a day where you do your toes, where you get it done at the nail shop, or you whatever you makes you feel good and makes you feel like that girl, okay, or that woman. Yeah, but I have a dedicated self-care day, and this is one of my favorite things that I started with in my 20s. When I was in my 20s, girl, I'm still in my 20s. But I started with in my early 20s. I'm 26 now, but when I was starting my self-love journey, I started to really try to dedicate a day to myself. So I remember being in my college dorm room. I'm gonna say dorm room because it was like a college apartment, but I had roommates, and yeah, it was kind of like a dorm to me. When I was in my college dorm room, I used to just play music at night. I used to get my wine, and I used to put on a face mask, and I used to just indulge in myself. And I realized that was such a good part of my life, because that was like when I started my healing and self-love journey. And I just remember wanting to understand myself, know myself, learn myself, have fun with myself. And I just remember that time that like I had so much fun, and I need to actually do that little playing music and dancing around again, because that was fun. But like when you're by yourself and you have a whole day dedicated to self-care, there's nobody there to like judge you, to make you feel any type of way. Like you can do whatever you want to do, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. There's just you and you learning and pouring into yourself. So having a dedicated self-care day is a must, okay? My days are on Sundays, and these days I usually do like a face mask. I'll deep condition my hair. Sometimes I'll go on a solo date, or I'll watch a solo movie, or I'll watch a movie by myself, and I'll just pour into myself, or maybe I'll like call a friend or whatever. Like this can mean so many different things, but you want to make sure that you are having a whole day dedicated to yourself. And when you do this, you want to make sure that most times you are like having that whole day dedicated to spending time with yourself, because that is pouring into yourself. That is showing yourself that you are a priority in your life. If you don't have a dedicated self-care day, it kind of makes it hard, because if you don't like do like a self-care Sunday reset, it's like, how do you go into the week? Like it's hard to go into the week knowing that you didn't pour into yourself. You're more likely to just be like really stressed, really upset, really angry, just not in the best state of mind. My biggest thing that I want to talk about with the dedicated self-care day too is stop changing up your schedule for others. So the best way I can put this is, especially for my ladies in a relationship and like losing yourself in a relationship, right? If you know that you have this day where you want to pour into yourself and that you really like need to, and you need a reset, like you just need it, like why are we stopping taking care of ourselves for someone else? Like what I mean by this is like you get into a relationship, you start like you've been pouring into yourself, but now that somebody has come into your life, their schedule might be a little different than yours, and now you're trying to change up your life around their schedule, and like not taking care of yourself because you are kind of like kind of obsessed with this person, and maybe you really really like them, but like no, that's not okay, because at the end of the day, who is really losing here? Okay, the person on the other end is winning, and you are losing because you are pulling back from yourself, you're taking away from yourself. But rather, you guys can both win if you take care of yourself first, and then you can be around the person, and you can give that person that good energy, like that happy energy, because you have poured into yourself, right? So I just wanted to put that out there, because a lot of times, like you can lose yourself in relationships, or maybe even a friend. Like maybe you like change up your schedule to like talk to your friend when you kind of know like you have to like do something for yourself. Like it's okay to tell people, hey, like I'm busy right now. Just communicate. And this goes back to like not being like quote unquote selfish in a way. So what I mean by this is like, make sure you're just communicating with your friends. Like if you can't do something and you know you have to pour into yourself because you have to do your self-care day, like it's okay to tell them like, hey, I can't right now. You don't even have to give them an explanation, but more so like just be honest with them, like just be like, hey, I'm kind of busy. And most of the times if people are your friend, they're gonna understand. People are gonna understand. So don't be afraid to tell people no. We're going to get into that in a minute about establishing boundaries, because I know that is the biggest thing when it comes to making yourself a priority. But the next thing I have is my favorite thing that I've implemented in my life. And this is the biggest thing, one of the biggest things. I'm not even going to say the biggest, because all of these things are going to help you make yourself a priority. But one of the biggest things that I have captivated last year is putting myself first thing in the morning. So taking care of me first thing in the morning. And a lot of people, I think, don't really pour into themselves first thing in the morning. So like, they might be angry that day. They might be upset because they just haven't poured into themselves. And what I mean by this is, personally for me, I wake up at 5 a.m. I do it because I realized that when I didn't do this, I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy, So I started to just pour into myself first thing in the morning. And I did that by just waking up early, Sometimes you might have to sacrifice certain things in order to be able to, pour into yourself, love yourself. That is love. Love is sacrifice. And you have to be willing to sacrifice certain things to, make yourself a priority. I don't necessarily sacrifice my sleep because I get up at 9 p.m. But what I am probably, but I do make a sacrifice with waking up early, but I love it because I'm able to pour into myself and I'm able to reap the benefits of pouring into myself first thing in the morning. So you don't necessarily have to wake up at 5 a.m, but what is the best time that you can get up, that you can pour into yourself and, you're not being disturbed, right? So, for me, like my phone goes on do not disturb at 9 p.m. It just does. It does. Okay. And around 5 a.m, it's still on do not disturb, and it doesn't come off do not disturb until about 6:30 a.m. I don't like checking my phone until 6:30. I like to go to the gym. I like to, pour into myself. I just like to do things that are going to make me happy, to make me fueled, instead of like dealing with the world in a sense, like going on social media and finding something upsetting and it hurting you like that's just it's rough. Okay, that's rough. So like pour into yourself first, because at least you poured and you gave yourself really good energy before you allowed things to just come in and just take away your energy, right? Because think about it, like especially if you're a corporate girly, okay? What if it's getting really, really bright. You're so used to just waking up, doing your hygiene and maybe doing your hair and then rushing out the door. Have you really poured into yourself? That is the that's the bare minimum, I would think, because yeah, you got yourself together in the hygiene formal way, but did you give yourself self-affirmations? Did you journal? Did you journal out your thoughts? Did you take the time to understand yourself? Did you go work out so that your energy could be happy, so you could feel good? And now you're at work, everybody's asking for certain things. They're asking a lot from you, and it becomes hard because you haven't poured into yourself first thing in the morning. It becomes hard. But rather, you could wake up, you could journal, you can meditate, you can go work out, maybe you could just sit in silence. There is something so peaceful about pouring into yourself first thing in the morning. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is your love language. I've talked about this before if you have been on my channel. I think I'm going to continue to talk about them. I'm going to continue to talk about it. Okay, girl? Because your love language is a game changer. Okay. You can type in Google love language quizzes, and it'll pop up and you can take a love language quiz and find out your love language. There are 5 love languages. So I've talked about this in my Reinventing Yourself into a Woman Who Loves Herself video, but the first love language is acts of service, then there's words of affirmations, there's physical touch, there's gifts, and there's quality time. So a lot of the time, okay, so when you take this quiz, you might have one really big love language, or you might have 2 that are really like close together in the score that you get on the quiz. For me, my love language is words of affirmation and acts of services, and they're like really close together. They're really hand in hand. So how I love is through my words. It's through my actions, which is, I love that for me. But you may love by having more, like, you may need to be loved by having more quality time. You might need to be loved by getting gifts or giving yourself gifts. And people might only think of love languages in terms of like somebody giving it to you, but how could you expect to know how to be treated or how you want to be treated if you have never treated yourself well? It starts with treating yourself well. So you have to treat yourself like a priority. You have to pour into yourself, and to know your love language and to give yourself your love language is a game changer. It really is. So to be able to say your love language is words of affirmations. Okay, so maybe you are pouring into yourself by listening to self-affirmations, and you're repeating these self-affirmations to yourself. Or maybe your love language is our gifts. So you love receiving lovely gifts. You maybe you buy yourself flowers every day. Not every day, but girl, I mean, you could, I'm not against it. Okay. But maybe like, you buy yourself flowers every week, and you do things that actually pour into you. And honestly, I think that we should be actively working on every single love language, but especially our top 2. It's a game changer, because especially when you get into a relationship, at that point, you know how you want to be treated. And a lot of times relationships do not work because of communication, and people don't understand like how they want to be treated. So this is going to make you so self-aware. This is going to make you look like a priority. And this is actually going to make somebody want to treat you like a priority instead of an option, because they see how you treat yourself, and like I said, people treat you how you treat yourself. So girl, are you treating yourself like a prize? You better. Okay, you better treat yourself like a prize, because you are, like, right? So let's talk about boundaries. I feel like this is the biggest thing when it comes to making yourself a priority. And this is something I still learn every single day. I feel like I transform my life in setting more boundaries in my life, but there are things that still pop up where I'm like, oh my God, this is a boundary for me. Like, I need to set a boundary, or this is a thing for me. And I didn't even realize, because I feel like getting to know yourself is a forever thing, because we change, we evolve, and, we constantly learn ourselves too. So to figure out your boundaries, it can be kind of hard and daunting, because it's scary, especially if you're not used to setting boundaries. If you're so used to everybody just kind of asking so much of you, and you're not used to setting boundaries, and you're scared like you're being mean, or you're hurting somebody's feelings, it can be daunting. It can be. I'm going to acknowledge that it can be daunting. The first thing that I want to talk about with establishing boundaries, and something that I typically work on myself, is, do you consider yourself in situations? So I think a lot of times when you don't set proper boundaries, it's kind of, A, you either don't consider yourself, or B, it's really hard for you to acknowledge your feelings, to know your feelings, or you're scared to say something. So you might be self-aware about your feelings, but you may be scared to say how you feel. So there's so many reasons you might not set boundaries, or you might be so used to somebody stepping over your boundaries, because in childhood people have stepped over your boundaries. So now you're like, you never been taught boundaries, and that's okay. Well, actually, it's not okay that happened, but now that you're older now, it's time to start establishing those boundaries. So I would say the first step is to consider yourself in most situations. So This is what I mean by like choosing yourself, when I was talking about in my video about reinventing yourself into a woman who loves herself. But like, consider yourself, choose yourself. So the way that I try to consider myself is, if somebody asks me to do something, you know, I always want to do something out of the kindness of my heart. So I don't necessarily think like all the time you have to just be like me necessarily, but I do think that a lot of times you should consider yourself in situations. So, you know, maybe somebody asks you to do something, but you know that you have something to do that day and you can't quite get to it. Okay, are you considering yourself, or are you ignoring yourself and not giving that to yourself? Like, are you letting the person know like, hey, you know, like, actually I have something to do, do you mind if I do it later? Or you could just say flat out no, because no is a complete sentence. And yes, this can be very daunting. It can be very scary. Sometimes it might be your delivery. So if somebody asks you to do something and you know you have something to do, just let them know like, hey, I'm a little busy, I'm sorry, but I'm busy right now. And that's okay. And most people will understand, because if they are there for you, if they love you, they will understand. Okay. So consider yourself in situations. And also, let's talk about acknowledging your feelings. I think the biggest way that you start to prioritize somebody else over yourself is putting their feelings above your own. And this can be hard, especially if you are a very considerate person and you consider other people. But you know, as being considerate is actually a really good trait, you also have to consider yourself consider your feelings in situations. You know that something is going to hurt you. That's when you set that boundary. Or if you know you don't like something, that's when you set that boundary. You know, you don't want to hurt, like, you don't want to keep hurting yourself. Like, and a lot of times when you don't set a boundary, you just keep going in circles. Like, you'll run into the same thing over and over again, the same problem, the same feelings. You'll stay kind of stuck because you never address your boundaries. So if you ignore your feelings and you don't set that boundary with that person, okay, now they are treating you a certain way because you haven't established those boundaries, or now you have run into the same problem with somebody else and you still haven't set that boundary. So that's why it's so important to acknowledge your feelings and set a boundary, because it's going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you going like this in a circle if you never acknowledge how you feel. Listen to me when I say this. Your feelings matter, okay? When I started setting boundaries, I used to get so like sad. I used to get so sad, and I used to feel so bad. I'm like, oh my God, why do I feel so bad? Why do I feel so sad? And I think that I had to allow and tell myself that, hey, your feelings matter. And I realized that deep down, did I really feel like my feelings mattered? Because if I felt like my feelings mattered, why did I feel so bad for setting a boundary? And I had to ask myself like, hey, was I being mean here? Like, am I being mean? And then I realized, I'm like, actually, no, I'm not being mean. I'm just saying how I feel. I'm just setting something to protect myself. You know, you have to protect yourself, okay? There are people out here that might treat you bad. So like, you have to protect yourself. Boundaries keep you safe. It keeps you protected. It keeps you from the bad people, okay? Basically. So know that your feelings matter. Your feelings matter. And the way that I started to acknowledge my feelings, because sometimes you might not even know how to acknowledge your feelings, or you might have like gone throughout life thinking like, oh man, my feelings don't matter. So how you operate, you might just subconsciously be ignoring your feelings because you just don't know how to deal either deal with your feelings, or how to know that you're feeling a certain way. So the way that I started to acknowledge more of my feelings is I used to, I still do this, but I check in on myself in my journal. So every morning I like to start with a journal prompt and ask myself like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? And I think that's the first step in acknowledging your feelings and being raw and honest, because sometimes you may not know how you feel because you've never like addressed it with yourself. So once you start addressing it, you start to put attention towards your feelings. And because you put attention towards your feelings, now that you're out in public and you start to do the very things that you do in private. So because in private you journal out your feelings, you understand your feelings, you can start to identify when somebody has crossed your boundaries, or when you aren't feeling up to something, and when to state that boundary, so that's how you start acknowledging your feelings so that you can address boundaries with people. And then another thing that I want to talk about too is, like, when it comes to boundaries, sometimes it's hard to know when something is a boundary, but the way that you know if it's a boundary is if somebody does something, and it might not be intentional, it might not be to hurt you, but maybe they've done something, and there's this feeling that arises. There might be this anxious feeling that arises, there might be this angry feeling that arises. Like, you start to feel, it's kind of like you start to feel outside of yourself. You start feeling like you're pulling back from yourself. I don't know how to explain the feeling, but you kind of start to get angry, right? But you're like, where's this anger coming from? Odds are somebody crossed a boundary and you felt, it made you feel bad. So just starting to, like, become in tune with yourself and acknowledging that you can have feelings, and it's okay for you to have feelings, is the way. And, like, let's talk about the fear of setting boundaries also. One thing I will say about this is, if you have a fear of setting boundaries, let me tell you this. First of all, boundaries keep you safe. So they're very, very important. It's important to have boundaries. But if you never set a boundary with somebody who has crossed it, think of it like this. How do you truly know somebody's true colors? It's when you address something with them. It's when you start communicating with them. It's when you start to, like, that's when you're shown somebody's true colors, because people cannot hide for too long. And what I mean by this is, like, if you address something with somebody and they get mad at you, they get angry at you, they start being rude to you, odds are that's not somebody you would want to keep around. That's not somebody that, like, thinks you are of importance. Because how I see it is that if somebody came to me with a boundary that they had, and maybe I crossed it by accident, I would acknowledge them. I would acknowledge their feelings. I would apologize, and that's the way to go about the friendship, right? But when somebody does something like that to you, you automatically know, hey, this is not somebody that I would keep around because they don't acknowledge my feelings, And when you have this fear of setting boundaries and you don't set the boundaries, you deprive yourself of knowing who to keep around, who is meant for you, of having discernment. Because a lot of times when you do set a boundary with somebody, you find out who they really are. And just know that any loss that you lose because of setting a boundary, you've actually won, because it opens up space for people that respect you, that love you, that pour into you. Because the person that didn't respect you, or the person that didn't understand you or care about your feelings is gone now. Like, they have opened up, oh my God, can you hear me? They have opened up a space where now you can invite somebody new in. So just remember, if you have a fear of setting boundaries, know that this is the best thing for you, and also that any loss that you have is going to be replaced with something even better. So another way that I want to talk about when it comes to making yourself a priority, what do you do for yourself when you are in an emotional state? So this is so important with making yourself a priority, because a lot of the times when we are feeling something, that is one of the surest way that you, like, how you cope with something tells you kind of how much you make yourself a priority, if that makes sense. So this goes back into, like, ignoring your feelings. So we have so many different feelings as humans, and when we ignore them, are we really making ourselves a priority? No. Are we, if we're unhealthily coping unhealthily, I don't know why that sounds weird. Is that a word? I hope so. But if we're unhealthily coping, are you really making yourself a priority? Does that make sense? Because it's not, unhealthily coping is not fixing the problem. It's not addressing the problem. It's not addressing the wound, right? So what do you do for yourself when you do get into an emotional state or when you're feeling a certain way? So this includes even when you're happy. So the emotions I can think about right now, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're angry, when you're jealous, like what do you do? Because jealousy is an emotion that people feel, but what do you do? So I want to explain a lot of this. So when you're happy and you've accomplished something, do you get yourself something nice? Do you acknowledge yourself? Do you give yourself words of affirmations? Do you pour into yourself? This is so important. Like, you should congratulate yourself. You should be your own best friend. You should be the first person to like love on you. Like, are you doing that for yourself? Okay. That is so important. Okay. I do think that people should pour into you too, but you should also really pour into yourself. Okay. And I'm not saying like every little win has to be like a big celebration, but give yourself a pat on the back. You deserve it. Right. This is what I mean by unhealthily coping with like when you're sad. So like, you know, what do you do when you are like, what do you do when you're sad? You know, do you ignore your feelings? Do you like just go out and, I don't know, party your life away and just kind of ignore how you're feeling instead? Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, like make yourself a priority. If you are sad, sit with these feelings. Like, it can be uncomfortable, but loving yourself and making yourself a priority means to cater to yourself, means to, in those like in those times when you're not okay, that you give yourself that love, that respect, that what's it called, that time to become okay. Because we're humans, we go through so many emotions, and it's like, are you giving yourself that space and that room to be messy? I guess, like, are you giving yourself time to be messy? You know, sometimes we could be a little messy, like we can be sad. So are you sitting in your feelings, and then are you journaling them out? And maybe you have to, like, maybe healthy ways could be to vent to a friend that you trust, or a healthy thing could be to journal, to, you know, sit in a nice little bath and just sit in your feelings and cry it out. It's okay to have feelings. Like I said, your feelings matter, and if you ignore them and think it's not okay to have feelings, and don't put attention to your feelings, how can you say that you think that you matter when you don't even care that you're sad, or you don't even put attention to the fact that you aren't okay? Like, you're not okay, and it's okay to not be okay. But it's you're doing yourself a disservice when you just try to be angry at yourself and upset at yourself for being sad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be a sad it girl. It's okay to be a sad baddie. Like, it's okay. Sometimes we sad, and that's okay. Another one is anger. You know, last year has tested my anger, boy. And it's like, do you allow yourself to be angry, and not in a way where you're like just being rude and mean to everybody, but like, let out your steam, you know, journal about it, be upset, you know, like vent to yourself, maybe vent to a friend, like allow yourself to be angry. It's okay. I think a lot of times when we don't feel okay, we just want to push ourselves to become better, but instead the very thing that's going to make us better is to sit in these feelings, you know. And another feeling that I want to talk about that might seem kind of like weird is jealousy. And the reason I wanted to put this out here is because I want to talk about the importance of following your dreams and following the things that you love. So, you know, when you are feeling feelings of jealousy, maybe you are jealous of somebody because, you know, maybe they have their dream job and stuff. And like, look, jealousy is a normal emotion, but it's what you do with it. You know, you don't ever be rude to somebody because you are feeling feelings of inadequacy, you know. But when you do this, when you do feel feelings of inadequacy, what do you do with it? Like, are you going after what you want? Like, or are you being rude and mean and like hating on somebody because, you know, they're living their best life? Like, first of all, congratulate people, because yeah, be a good person. But no, what I'm saying is, like, when you feel these feelings of like inadequacy or just being unhappy with your life, how are you channeling them? Are you using people as inspiration or, you know, motivation? And are you giving yourself the life you want to live? You know, that's a lot of times why people feel the way they do, because they don't channel that energy into like doing for themselves or being about themselves or just giving themselves that life that they want to live. Never settle, okay? Never settle. Okay. And I'm sure there are other emotions. Those are the only ones I could think of for some reason. Anger, sadness, jealousy, and happiness. Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is, this is a long video. I don't know. I'm having fun though. Like, hey. Getting into the habit of asking yourself questions. So this is another one that might be like, that's different. You know, that's a different kind of tip on making yourself a priority. This is so important though, because it's about becoming self-aware. The surest way that you may have not made yourself a priority is being like somebody else. It's not knowing what makes you happy and trying to people please and trying to be like everybody else instead of doing what makes you happy, instead of doing what you love. Sometimes people aren't themselves because they don't know how to be themselves, or they've never gotten and taken the time out to get to know who they are. Okay. So what I mean by like not being yourself is taken away from you not being a priority is, maybe you really like to do something, but you're so afraid to do it because you're afraid of what your friends may say, or maybe you're afraid that, you know, nobody wants to do it with you. But you are depriving yourself from yourself if you don't do the very thing that you love, or the very thing that's going to make you excited and happy for life. Or like if you don't dress the way you want to dress, or if you don't wear your hair the way you want to wear your hair, or your makeup, or, you know, you go out and do a hobby that you always wanted to do just because nobody wanted to do it, so now you don't want to do it because, you know, how are you a priority at that point? Like, you're not a priority if you're not doing the very thing that you love, you know, the very thing that you want to do, whether it be a hobby or not. You know, if you're living your life for other people, are you really a priority? No, you are people pleasing. And, you know, I'm saying this in like a really kind way, because I'm not trying to be like mean, but like, yeah, it is kind of like people pleasing, you know, living your life for other people. So when it comes to like asking yourself questions, it's important to become self-aware so that you know that, like, you know yourself, the ins and outs of yourself, so that you can show up as your most authentic self. And that's self-love. That's self-love. So I have a couple questions that I wrote down that you can ask yourself, like, what makes you happy? What is your favorite thing to do? What kind of hobbies do you like? How do you like to wear your hair? How do you like to wear your makeup? What kind of career would you like? What colors do you like wearing? What colors do you like? I don't know, what would you put in your apartment right now? Like, what do you like, you know? And getting to know yourself is a whole different ballgame. Like, it takes some time. I have a video about finding yourself in a world full of noise. I'll link it up above, but that one's really good to help find who you are. But you're not prioritizing yourself if you aren't becoming self-aware, and you're not doing the things that the very things that you want to do. So the next one I have that follows into that point is to tap into yourself. So when you start asking yourself these questions, and this could be an everyday thing, you know, I'm curious about myself all the time, you know, I find out new things all the time about myself. But when you find out a new thing about yourself, tap into it. Okay, we are prioritizing our happiness. Okay, this year, next year, all the years that follow, we are prioritizing our happiness. So what I mean by tapping into yourselves is doing things that is going to fulfill your soul, make you happy. So maybe you want to channel your inner child, so you do things that your inner child would have done, like, or always wanted to do, or has done before. Like, when I was a child, I loved to make content, and guess what I'm doing now? Oh baby, I'm tapping into that inner child and I'm making content. It might be a different kind of content than I used to make when I was smaller, but I'm still tapping into my inner self because I know this makes me happy. or doing things by yourself, trying new hobbies. That's tapping into yourself. If nobody wants to do it with you, do it with yourself, you know? That's tapping into yourself. That's prioritizing your happiness over what somebody else might deem as happy, because everybody's different. We all have different things that we see as like, you know, as happiness, right? Another thing is trying things with friends, or maybe bringing up the you that you've discovered, like, you know, because sometimes people do want to do the things that you have done. Maybe you just haven't showed that side of you, or maybe you just haven't, like, you know, told your friends about it and expressed to them that you want to do something, because maybe they want to do it too. Like, you never know. Like, tap into it. Be okay with yourself. Another one is creating a space that you love. Wear different outfits and makeup to try to see like what you like. And the next one, and the last one that I want to talk about, this video is so long, oh my god, investing in yourself, investing in things you love. Like I said, it's the same thing with tapping into yourself, but in a way where, you know, you invest in yourself. So time and money, right? So maybe you want to try a new hobby, invest in it. Maybe you want to start wearing lashes, invest in it. I don't know. Maybe you want to go back to school or try a course, invest in it. That's how you prioritize yourself. That's how you make yourself a main character. That's how you love on yourself. All of these things is what's going to make you feel like what? A main character, because you are living in your own movie, not somebody else's, girl. Okay, so that's all I had to say for this video. I don't know why this video was so long, but I honestly had a good time filming it. Like, I don't know. This might be a really long video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, and go ahead and check out my other content, and bye.